But for those who are not with us, my name is Edward Kallon. I am the UN resident and humanitarian coordinator of Zimbabwe. And I'm here with a very high-powered delegation from Zimbabwe to talk about one of our innovative financing opportunities as it relates to renewable energy in Zimbabwe. We are privileged this afternoon to have a very powerful panel here to discuss the issues of energy issues in Zimbabwe and the innovative SDG funding that has been secured to leverage private sector investment and to see how we can add value to the work, to the aspiration of the people of Zimbabwe as it relates to energy penetration in the rural areas. I'm also happy that I have Prof. Hubert Gijzen, who is actually the pen holder and the person who conceived the SDG project. Prof is the regional director and representative of the UNESCO regional office in Eastern Africa. He was previously in Zimbabwe and actually led this effort in developing the SDG proposal we are here to discuss. I also have on the panel here Dr. Sosten Ziuku, who is the Director of Energy Conservation and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Energy and Power Development in Zimbabwe. That's next to Prof. Hubert. And next to Dr. Ziuku is Jeremiah Mushosho, who is the UNDP Zimbabwe energy expert and specialist and other areas of SDGs. And then next is UN Women, represented here by Nisia Gumbo out there. And then we have Jacob Gamu, the Chief Economist of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, who is also here with us on this panel. And the last but not the least is Davies Musoso, who is the head of Alternative Investment, Old Mutual Investment Group Zimbabwe. So this is quite a solid group to take a deep dive into the issues of energy access and investment and financing opportunities in Zimbabwe. Since we have time constraints, I'm going to be a little bit focused in getting this done within this 1 hour schedule by ensuring that each of the panelists in the first round of questions, we have an opportunity to give a 5 minutes maximum intervention on the issues that will be raised with them. We try for a second round where we try to give 2 minutes to each of them on some follow-up questions. And my hope is that open it up for 10 minutes to the audience if they have any critical questions or follow-up issues they would like to pursue with the Zimbabwe team. To start, there are a few opening statements that I will want to deliver. And most of you are aware, those who have been privileged to read about energy in Zimbabwe will agree with me that the country is currently facing an acute energy crisis with an overall electrification rate reported as low as 44% in 2020, with supply of electricity for productive use failing to meet demands in the country. The energy deficit has increased from 25% in 2009 to 38% in 2016. This has consequently led to loss of production in key economic sectors such as agriculture, mining, and tourism value chains. Not only is the energy deficit more prominent in rural areas, but women and youths are disproportionately affected. The National Renewable Energy Policy has set an ambitious target to increase the installed renewable energy capacity, which is currently at 142 megawatts to 2,199 megawatts by the year 2030. The government has therefore put in place an enabling renewable energy environment set out on improving the share of renewable energy in the overall energy mix. In addition, this policy has set provisions for promoting rural off-grid renewable energy technologies cognizant of the need to support local entrepreneurships, productive activity in agricultural value chains, and clean cooking solutions. The overarching issue of inadequate financing and conducive investment terms for renewable energy and climate change projects remains an issue in the country at large. This is further amplified by issues pertaining to lack of adequate local financing instruments to support renewable energy projects, and critical issues like currency convertibility, off-taker risk, cost-effective tariffs, and lack of equity within renewable energy startups to leverage longer-term debts. These are some of the worries of the ecosystem of renewable energy. There is also a limited availability of technical expertise in the renewable energy and related fields in order to develop and scale up sustainable energy projects for productive use by small and medium enterprises in the country. Closely linked to that is also a prevalent urban-rural divide in energy access, as well as gender disparities with respect to and resulting in energy poverty, to be brief. Besides the general economic risks associated with the Zimbabwean economy, such as inflation, accessibility to international finance, and challenging currency environment, commercial banks are unable to provide the much-needed long-term, low-interest rate finance required to achieve competitive project internal rates of return. All these challenges are limiting the private sector investment in the renewable energy space and the participation of women and youth in this sector. As I said yesterday, if there is one investment area that remains politically neutral in most developing countries in the continent, is in the renewable energy sector. So don't be scared of the ecosystem as we have described it, but rather try to see the opportunities to leverage the potentials that exist in the country in terms of creating an enabling environment for investment in the renewable energy sector. And the SDG seed funding, to me, is here to create those capitalizing avenues that are critical to leverage the opportunities. But the panelists here, we dwell on these issues. So now, before I go to the first moderator section, there are a few questions that we need to ask ourselves as we moderate this session. And these are the following questions. One, how can we effectively address the barriers I've tried to analyze and catalyze local investment in renewable energy space? How can we adequately finance renewable energy projects that have a return on investment while achieving social impacts for the acceleration of SDG achievements in Zimbabwe? The second critical question here is how can we carry out a full-scale demonstration of concepts of the Renewable Energy Fund instrument driving an innovative model of accelerated local SDG achievements, and of course, economic empowerment and of communities through the transformational impact of introducing renewable energy technology with new entrepreneurship opportunities, income and job creation, and improved quality of life and the environment. I'm sure my panelists are going to grapple with these questions in the next few minutes to follow. But let me now turn to the panelists. And my first panelist here is Professor Hubert Gijzen, whom I've already told you is the pen holder and the brain behind the SDG Fund in Zimbabwe. We are very privileged to have him with us today, and he's currently the Regional Director of UNESCO in Eastern Africa. Prof, I know this has been something you'd love to do before you left, and thank you for all the efforts you made to make these concepts lively as it is today. But my question to you is, as the Regional Director of UNESCO, which happens to be the lead agency of this project in Zimbabwe, and that actually, as I said, conceived and worked with the country team to develop the project document. Could you please tell us what is really innovative in this initiative? How can we ensure that the intervention is sustainable? Those are difficult questions, but I'm sure if there's anybody here to answer it, so over to you, Prof.
Thank you.
To the points.
Thank you so much, Edward. But let me also thank the audience. Dear colleagues and friends, thanks for staying on. I know we're competing with lunch. That's a challenge. So I will promise we will serve you, not lunch here, but afterwards. But we will serve you an interesting panel discussion. And let me start by saying that I'm extremely excited with this new initiative. And I believe that we are embarking here on a very interesting journey together. Let me start by saying what this initiative is not about. This is not just about introducing renewable energy to communities. It is not just about setting up a financing mechanism for it. We have a lot of experts here in the room and in the panel who can talk about that. But this project is about something much more ambitious. I go back to the title of the project and I take the words out of the title that say, accelerating the attainment of the SDGs for local communities. Now, indeed, we know it, energy access has that potential to be a catalyst. Energy is an SDG in its own right, SDG 7, but if we position it cleverly in rural off-grid communities, then energy can be much more than SDG 7. It can become a driver for all the other SDGs, and it will be a catalyst for Agenda 2030 in a rural off-grid setting. But for that to happen, we must consider energy not merely as a singular sector and separately, but we must see it in a context of complexities, real-life situations, especially in situations where we have those most left behind. If we get that right, something very interesting might happen. Leaving no one behind. That's the term that we tend to use a lot in our meetings in the UN. I'm sure also the other stakeholders in a meeting it passes by, so now and then. But really, what about the rural off-grid communities in Africa? I would say these communities are probably the most left, they are part at least of the most left behind. No access to affordable energy means that they are locked out of a wide range of socioeconomic opportunities. They are in fact caught in a catch-22. How can we achieve the SDGs for these community members when they don't have access to energy? And I really wonder, while we talk so often about leaving no one behind, have we found a model that works to get them out of this catch-22? Does anyone has an answer to that? And that's the big question that we put central to this initiative. And that's where the so-called Alsa Model arose. And Alsa is an acronym that stands for Accelerated Local SDG Achievement. Now, so how does this model work? It considers, as I said before, the complex setting of an off-grid rural community, and it takes a whole system approach and a whole community approach. Now, one wonders, and I was asking myself that question, why is it that energy, telecom, and ICT companies do not rush to the rural areas and introduce these services and get masses of new customers onto their record? And these companies will tell you that in the rural off-grid communities, there is a willingness to pay, but there is no capacity to pay. And that's the catch-22 for them. So then they say, we can't invest. There is no repayment on investment. Now, I would turn it around. If that is the conclusion, that the reason why you're not going there is there's no capacity to pay, then we need to focus on that capacity to pay, correct? And therefore, in any investment scheme and introducing energy and ICTs to rural off-grid communities, we need to put that first, that capacity to pay. And we could achieve that actually by bringing 5 innovations that will be brought into the rural setting via this program. Let me briefly list them. First, combine energy and digital access. And to do that for these rural communities. And I predict that renewable energy and ICTs, they present a magic combination and a catalyst for change and the achievement of SDGs. 2, set up a renewable energy facility, which is at the heart of the initiative. That considers 3 objectives. This facility must serve 3 objectives. The first, reduce the risk of private sector to invest. Second, to provide access to soft loans and credits to the community initiatives and the community members. And third, that is to ensure the sustainability of this fund, so there must be a revolving fund mechanism. So these are the 3 main characteristics imposed on that facility, on that finance facility, but again, colleagues here can go further into that. Now, the third innovation, and that's at the heart of the concept and the model, that is now engage in particular women and youth from these communities to pick up the wide range of socioeconomic spin-off opportunities that arise when you have introduced energy access and digital access. Think about the installation of solar panels, Wi-Fi systems, battery systems, the servicing of it, the maintenance of it, the ICT infrastructures, setting up new opportunities that come out when you have energy and ICT. Think about e-mobility, agro-processing, irrigation schemes that can be run. But all of this is technology, and it needs to be serviced and set up. And these are opportunities. And here we look at community members to pick these up. And therefore, the fourth innovation is to build the technical skills and capacities locally. So if you have to service this from far away, from a nearby major city, or from China for that matter, it's not going to be sustainable. You don't create the opportunities for the community to turn around. So the fourth innovation is we establish community learning centers and introduce community TVET, which is backed by formal green TVET systems offered by TVET colleges, TVET polytechnics, and to build these new skills and capacities into the communities. And in doing so, you then set the scene for new jobs, new small-scale entrepreneurship by the community members. And that's where the whole focus on the capacity to pay for these new customers kicks in. And the fifth and last innovation is maximize the benefits from renewable energy and ICT's introduction in rural off-grid to upgrade community services. Think about water and sanitation, WASH programs, health services, education. A final comment on the last point, education. You all remember the devastating impact COVID had on education systems globally. At the height of the COVID crisis in 2020, we had 1.5 billion learners out of school. And when COVID hit the world turned digital, but not here in sub-Saharan Africa. If you look at it, we only have an estimated 18% of learners that have access to internet. But more than 50% of schools in sub-Saharan Africa don't even have energy access. They are not on the grid, so let even internet. Now, imagine a rural off-grid community getting access to renewable energy and ICTs and able to use ICTs also in education. What a game changer this is, both for the learners to ensure that education never stops, but also for the learners and the teachers in order to enable them and give access to high quality learning materials. So it would have the access challenge solved, it would have the quality education challenge solved. So in conclusion, as a priority, we must focus this initiative on community members to improve their livelihoods, income, self-employment, opportunities and services, and as such be able to really accelerate the achievement of all SDGs for those currently most left behind. And I'm convinced renewable energy and ICTs, if positioned cleverly, they have the capacity to make this happen. That's really what the Alsa model is all about. The opportunity is there to explore this new model for innovation, a new model for the acceleration of SDGs in rural off-grid situations. Thank you very much, and over to you, Edward.
Thank you very much, Prof. I think you were quite clear on the innovation paradigm of this project, and also you tried to touch on the sustainable issues around it, which I think is very useful for members that are present here and our colleagues online that are listening to this conversation. Let me go quickly to Dr. Sosten, who is the Director for Energy Conservation and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Energy and Power Development in Zimbabwe. Doug, as I mentioned earlier, on the National Renewable Energy Policy, which has been developed by our country, is quite ambitious and is calling for improving the grid capacity from 142 megawatts to 2,100 by the year 2030. When you look at those figures, you start asking yourself a lot of questions. How is this going to happen? And also Zimbabwe has a very ambitious objective of reducing greenhouse emission by 40% per capita by 2030 under the revised nationally determined contribution, which also hinges heavily on climate action through renewable energy sector. So Doug, what are the steps that you and your ministry and your government in general are taking to ensure that Zimbabwe achieves these ambitious targets? Over to you, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Perhaps I should start by expressing the Minister of Energy and Power Development's gratitude to the SDG Secretariat for inviting us to this exciting and insightful event, including the UN organizations that we have been working with. The Minister of Energy and Power Development has a target of achieving universal access to energy by 2030 in line with the SDG goals. And as was highlighted by the moderator, we have a worrying figure in terms of electricity access, which is at about 44%, which clearly shows that we have people, particularly in the off-grid sector, who do not have access to electricity. From statistics, in the rural areas, we are talking about 20% without access to electricity, and in the urban areas, slightly above 80%. So that in itself shows that there is a big gap that the private sector and the SDG fund, which we are working with, can come in and actually make a big difference. In terms of policy level, as we move towards 2030, we do have the renewable energy policy that was launched in 2020. We do have also the biofuels policy, also launched in 2020. We are currently crafting 2 additional policies. That is the energy efficiency policy to address climate change related issues, and also the electric vehicle framework. And these 2 policies we expect to complete them and launch them by the end of this year. May I also indicate that from a policy level, we do have what is called the Rural Energy Master Plan, which was developed by the Rural Electrification Agency. And that master plan is actually managed to digitize all the rural households in the country and created the zones that have been deemed fit for grid electrification and the zones that are deemed fit for electrification using off-grid systems, and those that are deemed fit to have electrification using solar home systems. So that master plan will guide us as we move towards achieving our targets. Now, in terms of projects that will enable us to move to more than 2,000 megawatts by 2030, Mr. Moderator and stakeholders, our regulator called the Zimbabwe Energy Regulatory Authority has been licensing renewable energy projects and other projects. But I'm happy to disclose that we do have about 90 projects that have been licensed by the regulator, the majority of whom, maybe 70% or so, are in the renewable energy space. I can also report that more than 20 or so of small projects of that nature have already taken off the ground, but mostly funded by own resources and other low-cost financing mechanisms. The downside of it is that the majority of these licensed projects are struggling to reach financial close. And as a ministry, we are very open to discuss with via DFIs, other private investors, to see how we can push those licensed projects so that those projects do happen in the shortest possible time. Also, we are looking at developing a large-scale hydropower plant called Batok Hydropower Plant. It's 2,400 megawatts shared equally between Zimbabwe and Zambia. And that will change the dynamics in terms of the contribution of renewable energy versus thermal energy for the country. The policies which I spoke about, particularly the renewable and biofuels policy, do have a number of incentives, which I am sure project developers can approach the ministry, our Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance, who are also here, so that they can benefit from those incentives. This includes the granting of national project status to all renewable energy projects, so that they get priority in terms of importation of equipment, and they get duty exemptions, taxes, and the like. And we, in terms of incentives, we also do have what is called prescribed asset status, which is granted through efforts of the Minister of Energy and the Minister of Finance. And this allows for renewable energy projects to then access funding from insurance and pension schemes. We do have with us on the panel one of our colleagues who has worked on this kind of incentives. And this is actually happening, and we hope as this kicks off, we have increased uptake and implementation of renewable energy projects. As I indicated earlier, we do have statutory instruments that speak to duty exemption on solar projects and all energy generation equipment. We have policies, new policies that came in last year on a third-party access to the grid that allows a project developer to only use the utility infrastructure for wheeling their power and sell their power to any customer of their choice. So in a nutshell, and in the spirit of ensuring that lunch comes closer, may I end here? Thank you.
It's really nice to be considerate on that aspect. That will take me straight to Jeremiah. Thank you, Doc, for the expose on efforts that have been made in Zimbabwe in creating an enabling environment for investment in renewable energy. For those who want more discussions on this, Doc is around for today and tomorrow, so please spend some time to talk to him about that. Let me go to Jeremiah, my colleague from UNDP. Jeremiah, what I've learned that you have been involved in many initiatives on environment, climate change, sustainability, and renewable energy in Zimbabwe. Could you please share with us your experience and lessons learned, challenges and opportunities? How can we address the complexities which Prof has just highlighted a few minutes ago? Over to you, Jeremiah.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk a bit about the opportunities, the challenges, what we have learned in the sector, the importance of energy in economic development cannot be overemphasized. And we know that the better the quality and quantum of energy available for a country, the better the prospects for development. We realize that providing clean and renewable energy access would really impact, I would say, a minimum of the 10 SDGs clearly outlined by Prof in his presentation. And you have heard that access to electricity in Zimbabwe is about 44% overall. But when we look at the rural areas, we know that it's about 20%. That leaves 80% of people without access to electricity. And it tells me that about 9 million people in Zimbabwe lack electricity. So what does that mean? How does that translate to the opportunities to be able to come out of poverty, health-wise, education, food production, agriculture, industrial development, and many other things? So, there are a number of challenges which we are facing in the country when it comes to Zimbabwe. I've already mentioned that 9 million people lack access to energy, and about 65% of the households, they rely on fuel biomass. What an opportunity to translate that into a viable business model for them to provide the energy. Renewable energy potential in Zimbabwe, we've got solar, biomass, hydro, and many other opportunities. It may interest you to realize that solar, biogas, and energy efficiency alone, we estimate that if we implemented that, we can create between 8,000 to 15,000 jobs in the country. When we look at large hydro, we could create hundreds of thousands of jobs, right, in the country. We know that about at least 10,000 facilities, public and private institutions in the country, they don't have access to electricity. So there's a huge potential for us to catalyze achievement of SDGs using renewable energy. In terms of the challenges which we want to mention, which again would then translate to our intervention strategy to address some of the problems, we have seen that there's, the scarcity of long-term financing which is required for upfront investment in renewable energy due to many reasons, right? So we are crafting a solution to this. There's also inadequate fundraising capacity and financial and project development capacities for both private and governmental institutions and other related institutions. This is why you will see that our intervention, we have a component of technical assistance, whereby we're going to offer pre-investment, investment, and post-investment business development activities so that we can strengthen the national institutions which are actually required to actually take forward this area. We do not also have guarantees in place, which I'm sure you agree with me that Zimbabwe's financial market is still growing and it would benefit a lot from de-risking. So we're considering that establishing some guarantees will give the comfort and assurance to potential investors that indeed they could invest in Zimbabwe, because the business case is very clear, the opportunities are there, but we need to further create an enabling environment to ensure that is done. High cost of capital, you will see that one of our instruments would really to try and provide capital which is affordable. It's more desirable, so if it's local, long-term, local currency finance, which can be afforded and which can be used locally for them to be able to produce the required electricity. So going forward, we believe that providing long-term and affordable capital would be very critical, not only for the independent power producers, but for other smaller SMEs who are keen to embark on projects which can deliver some of the SDGs component. I will tell you that the potential for solar water pumping for irrigation in Zimbabwe is massive. The future predictions when it comes to climate change, right? Zimbabwe is going to be drier, Zimbabwe is going to be warmer, and we know that surface water has disappeared. We are only left mostly with groundwater, which we need to drill and pump. So there's a huge opportunity for us to provide these 9 million people with water to do the agriculture, these 9 million people to provide them with the energy for other productive use, small industrial development, cooling their wells, running their businesses, sowing, and many other things. This is a clear business case which we need to explore. Putting in place guarantees, I think will create a further robust enabling environment for us to be able to attract finance, because this is not in place yet, but we really hope that through this project, once we establish at least a guarantee, it's a starting place for us to move forward. Technical assistance cannot be overemphasized. A number of project developers, a number of private sector players, they are not able to reach financial closure because they lack some of the technical specifications required for them to be able to close deals, particularly in the renewable energy sector. So we really hope to take through the private sector players, SMEs, including the communities, to identify the productive uses, develop them into viable business models, and hold their hands through the development and implementation of those productive uses of energy. And lastly, but also very important, is the development of pipeline projects, because we know that potential investors would like to come through and look at potential projects which have done feasibility studies, environmental management plans, etc., for them to weigh options in terms of their investment options. So we'd really want to develop a number of pipeline projects which are fully studied and ready for investment. We hope that this would really help us to take this forward. And later on this year, we hope to have a big investment platform in Zimbabwe where we can do matchmaking, where we can present these projects and try to leverage private sector investment in this particular area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeremiah. I think you made a real bite on the need that there are 9 million people out there who can also pay for energy if we work on delivering the access to them. And also thank you for bringing forward some of the challenges and also the opportunities, the way we see it in Zimbabwe. Now this takes me quickly to Madam Nisia Kumbo from the UN Women in Zimbabwe. Madam, in Zimbabwe, the majority of women are situated in rural areas which are off-grid, contributing to challenges in time poverty and energy poverty for women. From your expertise, what are some of the unique features of the Renewable Energy Fund that will address the challenges faced by women and youth in participating and benefiting in this sector? Over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I'm the only woman here. I'm really happy to be here. Maybe I'll not waste time. Let me highlight the unique features of our Renewable Energy Fund project that will be rolled out very soon in Zimbabwe. We realize that really women are affected by limited access to renewable energy in Zimbabwe, considering that, especially in rural Zimbabwe, women, they spend much time hunting, looking for firewood for cooking. They spend much time also looking for water because of the limited access to solar-powered water pumps, solar-powered system. So we really want to see that women are supported through this project. We are looking at the creation of an enabling environment for women to actually participate in this renewable energy project. We are focusing more on women and youth, ensuring that they participate in leadership structures. What is more interesting in this project is we want to see women really leading in terms of influencing decision-making in the management structures that will be set within this renewable energy project. We also want to really push for the gender equality agenda and women economic empowerment, because in Zimbabwe, women, they really lag behind. There are so many gender disparities, and also the social norms, they really affect women and youth in terms of access to renewable energy. We want women to spend much time doing productive things instead of spending time looking for firewood. We are saying women rise up and also benefit from the projects, be in charge of all the renewable energy projects that are really coming in. And in terms of building the capacity of our women entrepreneurs, we are going to support them in terms of building their capacity around how to manage their businesses, their small and medium scale enterprises. How are they going to also manage and also focus on improving their skills around entrepreneurship. We also support women to see that when they actually have a voice, because even now, if you look at in terms of the political representation of women, in terms of the politics, it's only maybe less than 20% of women. But in this Renewable Energy Fund, we are saying women, we are supposed to be there, you are supposed to be leading in terms of leadership. Then in terms of working with our private sector, we are also we're also going to provide technical support and guidance to our private sector partners and other key stakeholders in terms of gender mainstreaming, so that we address the needs of women and youth in the project, in the spirit of leaving no one behind. The end goal, we want to see improved income, improved livelihoods for women, as we also ensure that we are committed to Sustainable Development Goal 5 on gender equality. So basically, that's what we are really intending to roll out in Zimbabwe, and we are happy. We'll be working closely with our parent ministry, with the Ministry of Women Affairs, to push for the gender equality agenda within the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. It's giving the issues of gender equality and actually an affirmative action to empower women in renewable energy cannot be overemphasized. I'm sure we'll take cognizance of those needs as we engage with potential investors in this area. Now let's come to our colleague Jacob, the Chief Economist of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development in Zimbabwe. Jacob, there are general perceived economic risks associated with Zimbabwean economy, such as inflation, accessibility to international finance, and challenging currency environments. Commercial banks are unable to provide the much needed long-term low interest rate finances that are required to achieve competitive project internal rates of return. We are so pleased that you are here to shed those clouds around those issues. Could you please share with us some of the steps the government is taking to mitigate these perceived risks? Over to you, Jacob.
Thank you very much for outlining some of the challenges that are currently prevailing in Zimbabwe. To start, currently Zimbabwe's macroeconomic stability efforts are in place. A lot of policies have been put in place so that stability can return back to the economy, which will enable financial flows and the financing of critical investment expenditures. So to start, as a starting point, government is currently under the staff monitored programs being done by the International Monetary Fund. These programs will enable the country to re-engage with its international creditors, multilateral creditors like the African Development Bank, those in the Paris Club. So in this regard, Zimbabwe has made a commitment to come up with a debt clearance strategy that will target to pay token payments to those multilateral international organizations, so that we will be able to access financing for investment in various critical areas for economic development. And also, Zimbabwe received some special drawing rights from the International Monetary Fund, and the energy development and other productive sectors are some of the areas that have been identified by government to be those areas that have got a greater multiplier in enabling the economy to be on its feet as a matter of emergence in the short to medium term. So in this regard, as government withdraws its special drawing rights from the IMF, the energy sector and other productive sectors have also been identified. So the private sector will be able to access funding in order to expand their production processes, as well as giving access to energy development companies to develop mini grids that will supply affordable and clean energy. Moving on to issue of inflation, government is at the moment improving or tightening its monetary and fiscal policies to enable, in order to tame inflation, so that the country will be able to stabilize inflation, so that we can improve the standard of living for the generality of Zimbabweans. On the issue of exchange rate, the exchange rate in Zimbabwe has been volatile for some time, considering that there is the parallel market rate and also the official rate. However, government has taken a deliberate decision to allow for a flexible and more transparent market-driven pricing processes in the exchange rate in foreign currency to enable the procurement and the importation of critical equipment for industrial production. And also, on the issue of currencies, at the moment, Zimbabwe will continue to be on the multiple currency regime until other economic fundamentals have been addressed. So at the moment, we are currently utilizing the US dollar as a major currency, and also the local currency, the Zimbabwean currency, Zimbabwean dollar. So at the moment, these two and also other currencies, the South African rand, will also continue to be utilized in Zimbabwe in terms of as part of our currency reforms, until we have resolved some of the various macroeconomic variables that are currently prevailing in Zimbabwe. For the sake of protecting investments from international institutions, from international investors, Zimbabwe set up the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agents. The agents will look at some of the issues that have been raised by several investors on the issue of protection of their investments. So in this regard, the Zimbabwe Investment Development Agents will play a critical role in ensure that investments are protected, investment from international investors are protected. So these are some of the challenges, some of the measures that are being implemented by government in order to stabilize the economy, and as well as enable access to international financing. Thank you very much, Moderator.
Thank you very much, Jacob. And thanks for shedding light on some of the steps that have been taken by government. And I'm sure if people are interested, you will give them more information. But I'm also quite impressed in the last briefing by the Minister of Finance, where he was very clear on the steps they have taken, the challenges the country is facing. I really also work on the debt strategy that has been developed by the country to try to find ways to address those hanging issues. But thank you for shedding some light. And this brings me to the last speaker on the panel here, Davies, who is the head of alternative investments, the Old Mutual Investment Group of Zimbabwe. Old Mutual Investment Group is partnering with the UN in Zimbabwe in this SDG fund initiative. Now, coming back to you, Davies, how can we effectively use this Renewable Energy Fund as the investment vehicle to drive the renewable energy agenda in Zimbabwe? Whom are you targeting from the private sector to co-invest alongside UN agencies and the government of Zimbabwe? Over to you, Davies.
Thank you very much, Moderator. So in terms of, maybe I'll just give you a bit of background in terms of Old Mutual Asset Management. So in terms of Old Mutual Asset Management, we are an asset manager which is part and parcel of the Old Mutual Zimbabwe Group. And Old Mutual Zimbabwe Group is part of Old Mutual Africa, which is a Pan-African financial services company operating in 2 continents and also in 14 countries. But I think coming back to what role are we playing and what exactly we are seeing in this space. So I think the first one is just that when you look at just
our asset base in terms of funds that we are managing. Currently, as of April, we are managing in excess of 3 billion. And when you look at the split between who are we managing these funds for, we are managing these funds on behalf of retail clients, institutional investors, and private wealth clients. Now, when you look at and you find that institutional clients, they have got the biggest chunk of the money that we are managing. So why then are we coming up with a fund is that we have been making direct investments in through private equity in infrastructure projects, in solar as well as also in hydro, as well as also other opportunities out there. But we were doing it not in an efficient way because they were largely just direct investment, and there was a limitation on number of people or institutional investors that we can bring in. That then caused us to come up with a fund. In coming up with a fund, the main reason why we would like to come up with a fund is as we wanted to create a broad-based platform for institutional investors. In other words, what we are trying to do is that we are trying to crowd in, it's a crowd-in opportunity for the local investors. And then the other aspect to it is that we were also looking at it from the point of view that, you know what, if we are going to go out and also look for funding from other like-minded foreign investors, it would be easy for us to be able to replicate the same using feeder funds. Because, I mean, the issue of funds, it's a well-known capital raising initiatives in most of the developed markets. And then the other aspect is that we also wanted to have this platform whereby we are able to provide access, broad access to investors, to a wide array of investments, assets, or opportunities in the renewable energy space. And in that form, pretty much we're looking at intra-fund diversification and other aspects that using this platform, we are lobbying for some tax concessions as well as also prescribed asset, which Dr. Ziuku indicated earlier on. And the reason for it is that once we have got this platform, given those data, it allows us to do much more. It gives us the impetus to actually do more investments in the renewable energy space. But I think most importantly is that we also like the fund aspect is that I think we look at it from an alignment perspective to simply say when you look at just the incentive structures within that particular fund, it incentivizes that the fund manager as well as all, it creates that huge alignment between the people that are coming in, whether as limited partners into the fund, there is greater alignment in that respect. So from our point of view, these are pretty much the reasons why we thought that the solution, financial solution and structures that we would use for this would be through a fund. And our targeted investors have indicated these are largely institutions. And I was telling you just the FUM of our book, whereby we've got 98% of these is institutional clients. When I talk of institutional clients, I'm largely talking of your pension funds. I'm talking of your corporates. And the reason why we are targeting them is that they've got patient capital. When you look at just the investment that you like to do in renewable energy, you find that they are more suited for us to be able to use patient capital. And the funding is there. And for us, really, we have got a diverse base. And this book that we're looking at, which is about 2.9 billion in terms of US dollars, what we are just targeting to get is that at least probably just from our clients, we should be able to get 1 to 2% of the assets under management, either from the group companies as well as also from third-party funds. So when you really look at it and what we're able to do just with the funds that we manage, and we can replicate the same to the other funds that are out there, we should be able to actually have a bigger platform with assistance of the funding from the UN agencies. Thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you very much. It's really great that we can have somebody from the private sector to touch on the opportunities of financing this initiative and how we can leverage the private sector to support the implementation of the SDG funds that have been allocated to Zimbabwe. Colleagues, I think the panel here has been great in touching at the critical questions I asked before the session. That was how to address barriers and catalyze local investment in renewable energy space, how we can finance renewable energy projects and have a return on investment, and also achieve social impacts. I think the panel also has been able to look at demonstration of the concepts of energy fund and also driving an innovative model of accelerating local SDG achievements, and also economic empowerment of communities through the transformational impact of introducing renewable energy technology with new entrepreneurship opportunities, income and job creation, and improved quality of life and environment. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go with my second round of questions. So what I'm going to do now is to take 3 questions from the floor for the panel to add on it, just 3. We don't have much time now. Yes, I can see one here. Where are the mics?
Can I have yours? I'll be back.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Arnold Gekonge from Champions for SDGs Youth Initiative, based in Nairobi, Kenya. First, I would like to thank Dr. Hubert for the great initiative that you started, and the whole team for the wonderful presentations. Then I'd like to ask you, can this intervention be scaled up across Africa? Because the challenge that we are facing applies to other countries across Africa. For example, the one that you said about 18% of learners, only 18% of learners having access to internet. It's not only in Zimbabwe, it's also in other countries. So can this be scaled up, and how, and what would it take to do that? Secondly, I'd like to thank UN Women for representing women, SDG 5. And I'd like to ask you the question. You spoke about building capacity on entrepreneurship for women and youth. Where will this be done? Is it in schools, and how will you go about it? Because, for instance, if you choose to do it in schools, it might be more sustainable if it's in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, for example. And is it in pilot areas, or it's across Zimbabwe? And then lastly, I would like to invite you all to join me to educate young people about what SDGs are, because one time I came across a young person when I spoke that I am from Champions for SDGs Youth. They told me SDGs, the ones for the UN. So it means basically the young person thought the SDGs are things for the UN. Little did they know that they actually apply to them, and they can do something to contribute to Agenda 2030. Thank you so much.
Okay, let me take the last 2 before I go to the panel. Any other question, comments from the floor?
Maybe not.
I think my panelists did extremely well. I don't see any
Yes,
answer.
no doubt.
So let's go now to the panel for the last 2 questions. Prof, and then my colleague, Madam.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for these comments and questions. Champion SDGs use, is that the correct term? Now, let me first comment on that. To create more general awareness on SDGs is extremely important. I believe we have done a much better job than in the time of the MDGs. You would ask any common person on the street about MDGs, and they wouldn't know even when we were 10 years into the MDG agenda. So in that sense, I believe many more of us know about the SDGs, but the perception is, yeah, that's the UN, and they will deal with it. It's not my agenda. And I think there is where we must not make the same mistake as during the MDG era. Let's mobilize the power of communications. We must. We are launching as UNESCO a new program on engaging the media for SDGs. So to ensure that media report on SDGs on the one hand, provide information, but also that they give a stage to the ultimate stakeholders to communicate. And to make it, to translate the agenda to real life situations. That's, I think, what we need to do. Coming to your question about scaling up, you have maybe heard different references from different panelists to this initiative. I used the term initiative. Some said project, others said program. I think, yeah, technically it's a project because we get funding for a period of time. A project starts and has an end date, 3 years, 4 years. I would say this must be a program. It cannot simply be a project. That would not do justice to the challenge. It would not do justice to the opportunity that is out there to roll this out beyond Zimbabwe. My ambition would be with the partners to discuss and see how we can lift this up to the regional level. And establish a collaboration between country experiences. And I think together we can walk the journey much faster than each one alone. So there is a lot of learning between countries that can be facilitated. I believe to be able to do that, we need to pitch this program at 3 levels. It needs to develop at 3 levels. That is policies and strategies. So to get that right, the policy environment, and we heard some comments on that. The second is capacity building and provide the technical expertise and capacities at all levels. And the third is what I call, and that's where the rubber hits the road, the shaping of models that work, to test it out and to do a real scale interventions on the ground. So that's where the off-grid communities kick in. I was in maybe some of you were there with me in Kigali in, when was it, early March. We had the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. This is held every year, hosted by another member state. This time it was Rwanda. And the ministers gathered there were very clear about their commitment. The message was really, we need to support a green transformation of Africa. The other message was, in response to COVID, the realization we need to drive a digital transformation of Africa. And my question in a panel like this to the audience and the ministers was, that's all okay, and we need to make sure that we get the investments for this to happen and to fast track this. But let's be careful not to make a mistake. And that is to answer the question, but where are the capacities and the skills, the technical skills to drive these transformations, the green skills, and if we don't pay sufficient attention to that, we may get stuck and much of the investments may actually be lost on the way. So I think that was a message well understood, and we want to incorporate that in this program. So that's why I put so much emphasis in the introduction that we need to focus on building the right skills at all levels. So yes, the formal TVET and even university level, but also bring it to the community. And that's where, again, the rubber hits the road, because that's where the numbers kick in. And if you engage the community members and the women and the youth in particular, then you provide the opportunities with minimum skills building there for them to pick up all these socioeconomic opportunities that arise when you provide energy and digital support to these communities. So I think that's the trick. Let's not lose sight of that important aspect. Building the technical capacities and the skills for this to be able to happen. Let me hand over to my colleague from UN Women, because there was a question addressed to you as well.
Okay, all right. Hello. Hello. Okay, thank you so much for raising that question. So basically, since we'll be working with the Ministry of Women Affairs, Community, Small and Medium Enterprise, we know they've established vocational centers in communities, the targeted communities for this project. So we'll be working closely with the Ministry of Women Affairs to deliver the various trainings on entrepreneurship, business management, financial inclusion and literacy. In terms of reaching out to the schools, yes, already We do have plans to working with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education so that, we catch them young. The government is so much committed in terms of supporting the youth and the young people in terms of entrepreneurship development. So this project will work closely with the Ministry of Education to ensure that we catch the young boys and young girls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to the panelists. I think we are bringing this session to an end. I don't know if any of you have any last minute speech, one sentence. I start from which was there? One sentence.
I think it's just on behalf of all Musho, just to thank the UN agencies for having to work on this initiative. I think the impact of this is going to be good. It's going to be very great for the economy. So we are happy to be part and parcel of the team that's working on this, that will create a new revolution regarding renewable energy in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Yes, access in energy development will also assist us in unlocking some of the economic variables that are actually in the negative. So in this regard, the Ministry of Energy and Power Development should intensify investment in renewable energy so that our industry will continue to expand, so that we may be able to stabilize inflation and also be able to assist in the attraction of international financing. Thank you.
Maybe let me say, let's invest in women for economic development. Thank you.
I think that the energy transition needs to be just and it needs to be people-centered. And additionally, I think issues to do with the risks, we need to have a transparent framework to make sure that risks in a certain region or a country that are not mispriced or misperceived. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The $10 million SDG fund for Zimbabwe, which is going to be scaled up to 45 million through our partners, Old Mutual and others, is coming at the right time. The Ministry of Energy, we were mandated early this year to make sure that the renewable energy policy is quickly implemented. And in that renewable energy policy, we proposed the establishment of a renewable energy fund. So you can see the synergies coming from this SDG fund and what we were proposing as a ministry. We were also proposing viability gap funding for off-grid projects, and the SDG fund is also going to address that. So this is coming at the right time. So with that, I say thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yeah, my final comment would be emphasizing the power of partnerships. That's what's going to drive this program, a diverse partnership. It's UN, it's private sector, it's government, it's the community level, it's women, it's youth. The power of partnership will make it happen. It will lead to this model to work out in accelerating SDG achievement in local off-grid communities. And I would like to invite all of you to join us to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Edward, and I hope I don't forget anybody. Thank you. A round of applause. Professor Hubert, thank you, as well as Dr. Sosten, Jacob, Jeremiah, Davies, and Madame Nisea. Thank you so much. A couple of quick announcements about now. So we are heading ourselves to lunch. It's the same venue as yesterday. If you don't have your little voucher for lunch, make sure there is a number of them in the reception, so pick it up. The next session in this room, all the afternoon is going to be in this room. It starts now at 2:30, so not 2:15, 2:30. Please try to be back. It's very interesting and exciting. We're going to have a new poem from Madame Sitawa Namawali, and then we're going to have the session about driving financing for inclusive growth, establishing impact investing in Kenya. The session with the signing ceremony between SDGPP, UN, CDF, and